Hey, what's up everyone? This is Brendan Lowe here from Jazz Piano School, and I have an amazing podcast episode coming to you guys today. This is gonna be episode number 145. Now, a lot of people can improvise really well, but sometimes it's just a little boring, right? There's not much contrast, there's not many varying textures. So in today's podcast episode, I'm gonna teach you 9 different ways you can become an amazing storyteller improviser, right? So remember when you were a kid, you used to go hear these storytellers and they had all these different character voices and like settings and themes, and they'd switch between characters and move around. Like, I remember these so vividly. Like when I was a little kid, I was like, this was the best thing ever, right? So that's exactly what you want to try and accomplish when you're improvising, right? You want different textures, different colors, contrasts, all these different things happening so you can become an amazing an amazing storyteller from your improvisation, okay? So that being said, let's go check it out.
All right, so the first way you're going to do this in the best way, in my opinion, is going to be patterns. So I'm going to take a blues for all of this, right? Blues is very simple, and we can work on it. So patterns, or motifs, as I like to call them, are going to be one of the greatest ways that you can add storytelling into your playing. So if I were to play a solo like this, right? That sounded cool. That sounded great. But where was the storytelling aspect, right? What did you remember from that solo? Probably not much. I don't even remember what I played, right? To be honest with you, like there was no memorable moments in that solo. I probably didn't connect with you that much. There was a lot of notes. There was a lot of approaches, some blues licks and things like that, but nothing really stood out, right? And that's why patterns are so important to connect to your audience, to leave space in your solo and really tell a story with improv. It also gives you time to kind of reflect in the moment about your feelings, your emotions, and what you want to express through the music instead of just kind of regurgitating everything that you have to say, right? So here we can create patterns in a number of different ways, right? So any sort of pattern, melodic, rhythmic, it doesn't matter, just some sort of repetitive pattern, right? Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe I do it again. I'll do it again. I change it up, right? So just creating some sort of repetitive pattern is going to allow you to take your time in your solo. It's going to allow you to breathe. It's going to allow you to think about where you want to go. It's going to allow your head and your mind and your ears to listen to the next point you may want to go to, right? So I was just doing a little repetitive pattern there. And again, I can move into my next repetitive pattern or motif, right? It can take you in so many different ways, right? When you spend a little time with one pattern, you start to develop the pattern, and it gives you time for it to develop into something else, right? That time is so essential and crucial into storytelling, right? Imagine a storyteller kind of just flowing through the story, not spending any time with character development, the atmosphere, the area that the characters are in. If you just went through the story, it's a bad story, right? It's not fun, right? So patterns, motifs are very, very crucial. Now, rhythms is going to be number 2. Rhythms are going to be absolutely crucial. You need contrasting rhythms. Again, the first example I gave you, can you imagine if I just played all eighth notes, right? Even all quarters in eighth notes. it's not enough. We need to have multiple rhythms infused into even single lines, right? Triplets. 16th notes, right? Space, groupings of 16th notes, groupings of triplets, right? Repetitive, all the rhythms have to be contrasting as much as possible. Kind of, again, you'll probably hear this a lot. You need to think of a drummer, right? Think about a drummer creating drum solo. If he was just playing, patterns on his snare, just like eighth note patterns, it's not interesting. The reason drum solos are so interesting because they have so many different rhythms, right? You have to be creating different rhythms at all time, all right? Number 3, the call and response. I absolutely love this, right? However you want to do it. You can do back and forth. You can do kind of like a pattern going down like I just did. You can go. Right? So back and forth, call and response is such a cool thing to do. And again, it doesn't have to be fast. It can be super, super slow, right? It can be like... right? Take your time. Create lots of space in between the call and response. Amazing thing to do for storytelling, right? You really get the creative juices flowing. Number 4 is going to be contrast of all variables. So this is going to be loud, soft, thick, thin, every single texture you can think of, playing a lot, playing a little. You always want contrast. You always need contrast in order to keep things interesting. So if I'm playing, if I come out burning, right, completely different contrasting textures. Now, obviously, I was playing like random, stuff to show you, but like playing so much and then going to playing a little, it actually makes it that much more interesting, right? If I'm just playing a little all the time, then it's going to get boring. But if I play a lot and then a little, you see what it did to a little, it made you perk up. You're like, oh wait, it made you listen harder, right? You're like, oh, okay, cool. Like I see where he's going here. But if I just started and I was like, right? If I just keep doing this, eventually you're gonna be like, okay, I need more, right? You need to give me more. You need to go somewhere, right? So contrasting variables, loud, soft, thick, thin, right? All different things. And if I'm just playing single notes, I can start to play double notes. Full 4-note voicings, chords, right? And again, certain textures, slides, dyads, stuff like this, clusters, right? Think about all these different types of textures. I was getting a little carried away there, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like let your creativity in all these different types of contrasts of textures, right? Long, short, thick, thin, loud, soft, even ranges on the piano. Use the entire piano when you're soloing to contrast all the textures. You should always be contrasting in your solo at all times, right? Don't just do one thing for your entire solo. It's going to get boring, okay? Number 5 is going to be reharms, right? So number 5, a great thing, reharms. If I'm just playing a normal blues, right, I've just been playing kind of a standard voicings here with shells. But if I immediately start my voicings with more of a sus sound, like this, or maybe some cluster, my left-hand cluster. Now, this isn't exactly a reharm. It kind of is because I'm making it a sus, but it's more about the voicing I'm using. So number 5 is more about reharms or the types of voicings you're using. I could also start my solo playing a voicing like this. flat 9, sharp 11, 13, right? And I could solo over this chord. This is going to sound much different than if I'm just doing this. Right? If I start out here, you know, that's completely different. That's a huge contrasting texture right there, right? So reharms, or if I did this, right? You know, maybe go up a half step. You know, whatever it is, but adding reharms, adding some different types of voicings, right? Whether it's sus, you can use more extensions of your voicings, like I just showed you. This, you can use some altered voicings if you want, right? Have that B flat 7 altered in there in your left hand, right? You can play more of an altered scale. And again, whatever you want. Going to the A minor 7, you could use a flat 5, going to altered, right? Just switch things up. Switch all the harmonies up. Okay, number 6 is going to be comping. Don't forget that working with chordal solos is an amazing texture to have, because when you do break out into your right hand, it's going to sound great. So if I just started, the bass is walking, drummer swinging right now, and this is my solo, right? Now, I built up, I'm telling my story, right? Eventually, I have to break out of this chordal solo. So eventually, after, you know, a little bit of time, I kind of start to mix in a little bit of my right hand, but not too much. I'm not going to completely break off that texture. And then finally, you can break off and do whatever you want. But comping, right? Don't forget to go to comping. And the same thing, if you start, you know, it kind of goes in with the call and response thing, right? You're comping for yourself, right? So I did a little comping. You know, so I comped for myself. It's an amazing thing to do. So many people forget about that. That kind of lends itself to the left hand too. Excuse me. So many people forget about their left hand. It can be a character in your story when you're improvising, right? Most people will take on the fact that your left hand just kind of in the background the whole time, right? Kind of like just comping rhythms, but really bring it out. Like leave space for your right hand, for your left hand to have a conversation with your right hand. Benny Green does this so well with his lines, right? Oscar does it too. Not to the same extent that Benny does it. But again, like Oscar has these different shells moving, so. Sorry. So he'll go up and down to the shells. He'll go. Right, you hear these different shells descending, ascending, you know, telling part of the story. But again, Benny, he'll play a line. Right, he has these solid comps in his left hand. Happening in between the lines, right? And again, with a slow swinging tune, it sounds great. So if you're playing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. right? So really getting that storytelling happening with your left hand is a crucial part of the storytelling in your improv, and it's such an amazing texture that so many people kind of neglect. All right, so that was number 6, comping. Number 7 is going to be kind of a thing I can't display too much here, but 7 is going to be space for interaction, right? And again, not many people do this, but you have a band playing with you, and it's so great when you can get them involved even in your solo, right? So leave lots of space for them to say something. Aaron Goldberg does this so well on some of his albums, and he leaves 4 measures of space, just nothing, so... 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. He's kind of, it's not really trading, but at the same time, he's using his solo to really allow the drummer or the bass player to say something while he's soloing at the same time too. So there's much more interaction happening, and when that happens, it's just phenomenal, because that's what jazz is about. Having a conversation between the musicians as the the form is moving on. So space for interaction, don't forget about that one. 8 is going to be stylistic approaches, right? So if I approach a blues, I can approach it with a modern, more of a modern. Whatever it is, I can approach it more from a bluesy standpoint, right? More of an Oscar. It can be more Oscar, it can be more Errol Garner, right? These are all different textures and styles that you can incorporate into your playing, right? So think about the different styles. I mean, this takes a long time. Obviously, you could go more Herbie, right? All these different kind of chromatic patterns, things like that, more pentatonic stuff you can do. There's so much room for stylistic, kind of approaches into your solo that you have so many options, right? Don't just do one thing. Don't just use one style. Now, if you have developed your voice to a certain extent, then obviously play the way you feel. But when I'm playing, I mean, I'm trying to pull from so many sources, and it comes out naturally at this point for me. But I'm really trying to pull from all of my influences and to speak what my soul, and as a beginner, it's hard to do that, but just keep that, in mind as you're soloing. Now, number 9 is going to be to really, this is a big one, right? You want to draw from experiences. You want to draw from your heart. You want to speak from your heart. Don't just play to play, right? Always make sure you have intention for the music, the way it speaks to you, and to express that in every single note you play, right? So if you're going to play and you're performing, you should set a time practice to play like this, right? And as I'm demonstrating, I'm still kind of not completely doing it, but if I really set an intention to play like I want, it's going to be completely different style than rather just kind of blowing for the sake of blowing and fiddling around, I call it, or messing around or BSing, right? So if I'm really trying to play, it's going to sound a lot different, right? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, obviously, you can see like my intention, my connection to the music is much, much greater when I'm focused on that approach, right? Rather than kind of some of the things I was demonstrating for you before, right? I had mistakes. I was kind of flubbing some notes. I was kind of just playing. Some of the swing wasn't happening, right? But when you need to practice connecting to the music. As silly as that sounds, you need to practice connecting to the music, and that's how it will come out in your playing, right? You can't just expect to, if you're playing at home, and you're kind of fiddling around, right? You know you're BSing. You're just fiddling around. You're just fiddling with stuff you're knowing. You don't have a pure intention for expression, right? For freedom of expression. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. You could just know the blues scale. But play something from the heart, right? Don't just let your hands take over, right? My hands can just do, like the Addams Family. You don't want to be the Addams Family. Remember Thing? Right, his hand is just moving around. There's this hand character called Thing. If you haven't seen the Addams Family, it just moves around, and it like talks to Gomez or whatever, the dad, right? Doing sign language. You don't want your hands to be Thing. You need to be connected to what you're playing, right? So always strive to feel connected. And again, set aside like 10 minutes. It's hard. It's really, really hard to connect for 10 solid minutes to what you're playing and make everything you play intentional. Right, it's very, very hard, and that's why the greats like Keith Jarrett, Brad Meldau, Chick, Herbie, all these guys up on stage, they're performing at such a high level. It's like they're drenched in sweat. Oscar, and it's just like it takes it out of you. It's hard. It's so hard. So anyway, just to review. Number 1 was going to be patterns, any sort of patterns, right, that you're going to play. Number 2 is going to be rhythms. Number 3 is going to be call and response, jumping up and down. Number 4 is contrast, all sorts of contrast in any and all variables you can think of. Register, high register, low register, soft, loud, thick, thin, you get it. Number 5 is going to be reharms, or different forms of left hand extensions, adding in all these different types of, it can be clusters, it can be spread out, sort of voicings, any sort of other types of voicings to spark interest or creativity in your story. Number 6 is going to be comping, right? Don't forget to comp. I got a cool call and response thing going on with my comp too. So call and response doesn't have to be with lines. It could be line and comp, right? Which is really cool too. Number 7, space for interaction. Leave space, for interaction with your fellow band, your fellow musicians, right? Number 8, styles. Think about styles approaches. You could do all bebop, right? You could be playing all bebop. You could be playing Bud Powell. My bebop over the blues sounds like Oscar because I studied him for so long. But if you're playing, depending upon what tune you are, right, just think about styles. It could be Errol, it could be Chick, it could be Herbie, McCoy, whoever you love. Try a different style. Try to recreate other styles and the person you love. I mean, because you want to pull from everybody. Everybody has something to offer you. Okay. And number 9 is practice expressing from the heart, even if it's one note. Make sure it's like what you want to play. If I want to play. Could be just holding a note. But make sure you are intending to play everything that comes from your heart through your arm down into your hand. And you must practice that, because when you get into performance situations, whether you're playing for yourself, your family, or other people, a concert, that practice is truly going to translate into something special. I promise you. Okay? I promise you. All right. So that was it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Excuse me. I will see you in the next podcast episode. And as always, happy practicing.
All right, well, I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode on how to become a great storytelling improviser. Now, if you're new, if this is the first podcast you're viewing, go ahead and hit subscribe down below. We release a new free podcast tutorial lesson like the one you just saw every single Wednesday. We also release a lick of the week on Mondays as well, and you'll get all of that sent to you, through our channel when you subscribe down below. If you have any questions, comments, or if you have specific topics that you want to see from us, recorded in a podcast format, definitely go ahead and leave those down below. With that being said, I look forward to you delivering more free content, jazz piano education from us. Go to jazzpianoschool.com to check us out. And until next time, happy practicing.